Today we're going to talk about making the game look the way you want it to look. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether you want chicken lasers or chaotic paladins, I'm here to help you with everything. As per usual, I want to thank you all for coming by and savor the flavor of whatever junk I'm spouting today. If you want to help me, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell, do a little dance for me, I don't care, and spread the good word to all of your friends, because mouth-to-mouth publicity is better than me trying to beat YouTube's algorithm on my own. Today I want to talk about what I think is one of the easiest, most important and best tools to make your Dungeons & Dragons game or character actually your Dungeons & Dragons game or character. This is going to work for both Dungeon Masters and players, so everybody should be happy today. We're going to talk about reflavoring. Now, what is reflavoring? It's very simple. It actually means you're going to change the way something looks, feels, smells for all I care, without it actually having an impact on how the game rules work. You've seen me do this. If you've watched my role-playing videos, especially I think the one with the Artificer, I've done this before. I've taken the base mechanics of a class and I dress them up whatever way I like, and sometimes they don't even resemble the flavor that is attached to the class. Okay, this might sound complicated. I talked about chaotic paladins in the intro. I did that in my paladin role-playing video as well, where I said, look, paladins are usually lawful. 5e completely allows you to make a chaotic paladin. You just have to reimagine the class a bit. But it didn't touch any of the core paladin mechanics. It didn't change anything about how a paladin is played or what rules they have to follow. It just changed the concept around it. And just as I do it with classes, and just as I encourage people to do it with spells, you can do this with pretty much anything in the game. I'm really glad that when Tasha's Cauldron came out, they included this little bit in the spell section where they actively talked about making your spell look the way you want, and they gave this wonderful image of this sorcerer who's a farmer whose magic missile looks like chickens. I adored that. That is exactly what I was looking for in the new book, actually. Ways to open up the game and take it away from those true and tried fixed things that you have to obey. Oh, your fireball's red, your tiefling doesn't have a tail. Who cares? And that might be why today is going to sound a bit all over the place, because this is a lot that involves the entire game that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to be drawing examples from my own experience throughout the years rather. There's only two rules actually to respect when reflavoring something. One, whatever you do, the mechanics behind what you're changing cannot change, because then you're not reflavoring, then you are homebrewing. The farmer with the chickens, nothing is different. It's still magic missile. It obeys all the rules. But if the player behind the character would say, yes, but the chickens explode on impact, then you're changing the spell, and that has an impact on the game. So chickens, yes, exploding chickens, no. And the second rule, because you're still playing in a world that is being governed by somebody else, your DM has to be okay with it. Somewhat. Now, DMs, listen to me. Don't just shoot down stuff that doesn't impact your game at all. If a person wants the chicken missiles, give them the chicken missiles. But if you're like, yes, but they want to change the flavor of a class in a way that it interacts really badly with the world that I'm designing, that's a legitimate reason to go and talk to your player about how you can solve it. That doesn't mean you have to shoot down your player's idea immediately. Just talk to them. Maybe you can find some sort of compromise. Maybe you can even implement the flavor the player wants to bring into your storyline. Who knows? Apparently that's fun to do. I'm going to talk about reflavoring for Dungeon Masters a bit first, because it's actually the simplest. Often when I'm designing stories, I have a really strong idea about what type of monster I want to use. Oh, I need hags, I need fairies, I need zombies, whatever. And I also have an idea about what I want an encounter to do. Yes, I want this encounter to include a very strong grappling monster, like this strong, hulkish Frankenstein thing of a monster, but it's an undead, obviously. And maybe I don't find any creature in the undead section that actually does what I want to do. Now, I haven't checked this, don't shoot me if there's an actual Frankenstein grappling Hulk in there, but imagine, just like the entire game. Then I could just go and look and, oh look, here's an ogre or a giant, a troll, something truly strong and grapple worthy, and I just paint it undead. Not literally, I don't paint stuff, that's my girlfriend's department, but you just reskin the monster. Now your troll isn't undead. You don't necessarily have to change anything. If you want to keep the regeneration, it can. Some undead force can be regenerating it all over the place. If it's a troll, if it's an ogre, it's still going to be stupid and slow and strong. So it doesn't really change anything to the way you have to run the game. And more importantly, I think this is very important, it keeps your players guessing. If you have players with a lot of experience and you put a troll on the table, they'll go like, all right, it's a troll, burn it. But if you put some type of unknown undead Hulk on the table, they don't know that it's following the rules of a troll. They won't resort to fire. Well, maybe they might because they know Frankenstein's monster is afraid of fire, but that's because my example is just stuck in my head now. But in general, they will not apply meta tactics because they don't know what monster they're actually fighting on paper. In front of them is a giant undead Hulk. In reality, it's a stupid ogre stat sheet that you're using. It keeps your player guessing. It allows you to dress up your encounters any way you like, and it limits you a lot less in what you do. Now, obviously, sometimes, in this case, you have to respect the fact that if you're reskinning something, certain spells will have to work on them. So for Dungeon Masters, it might be easier to shove this under the homebrew category, because if you say, oh, this ogre is going to make a great undead, and the cleric wants to cast turn undead on them, you have to allow them. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. You're right. But that's it, really. To compensate, you get regeneration from the troll or whatever. So that's for Dungeon Masters. Don't be afraid to reskin monsters all the time. It really, I think it enhances the game tremendously. I've done it loads of times in most of my campaigns, actually. And then for the players, there's a few things I want to talk about. And I think the first thing I'm going to talk about is weaponry. And more specifically, I'm going to talk about the rapier. So there's quite a few weapons in the arsenal. You've got your basic bonky, stabby, slashy weapons for strength characters, and they have a lot of variations, and usually they can find what they want in the set. They want a spear, they get a spear. They want a sword, they get a sword. They want a big axe, they get a big axe. If you're a dexterity wielding chap though, and you want to use a D8 weapon, you're stuck on one weapon, the rapier. Even your, for some reason, dexterity based barbarian or your dexterity based paladin is stuck to the stabby weapon that makes you look like a fencer no matter what you do. And that's a bit sad. So without disrespecting the fact that the rapier deals piercing damage and the fact that it's a short weapon, you can still reflavor it. Maybe it's a very short spear, not like the longer one that is thrown, or just something short, stabby. Maybe if you come from a tribal setting, it's a stick with a very pointy end that isn't even a decent spear. It's a stabby weapon, and it's slender enough that you can use dexterity for it. You get my drift? So your weapon is still going to be a finesse-based D8 piercing weapon, but the way it looks is completely up to you. If you want it to look, well, it's a bit ridiculous to say it looks like a hammer, but it's a dexterity hammer. You get the idea, but technically that's possible if your DM allows it. But then it would be a hammer that deals piercing damage. Could be a mattock though, like a combat pickaxe. A combat pickaxe that deals piercing damage. It can be like held with one hand. And and you can respect the damage type, the damage die, but suddenly you don't look like a fencer. You look like a really angry dude with a pickaxe who's wailing on things. I think it's one of the main gripes I have with the choice of weaponry as a dexterity character. It's either a short sword or a rapier or a dagger, and you're done. And the strength characters have this entire long list of stuff to look for. Moving away from weaponry, I've already talked about spells so many times. Your spells can look whatever you want, really. I keep going back to the magic missile chicken guy because I absolutely love that idea. But whatever you're playing, make your spell look the way you want. And if you're using this big or signature spell, describe it to the rest, what it looks like. And it's okay if your ball of fire doesn't look orange. If it's blue, it's blue. That's perfectly fine. Don't go changing the damage type though, because there are certain class features who do that. And also you could open up new builds that aren't meant to work with something because you changed the damage type. So that's not reflavoring, that's just homebrewing. And now we come to my major thing, and I can be relatively short about it because I talk about this all the time in my class RPG videos. The way your character looks does not need to conform with the stereotype that belongs to the class. It is not because you're playing a wizard that you have to look like this frail nerd, basically. It's not because you're playing a monk that you have to be this Asian Zen Buddhist monk. It's perfectly okay to play a monk and be a rough and tough street fighter. So you don't look like the Asian monk, but you're using all the monk rules. You have key points, you fight unarmed, but you're a street fighter. Instead of key points, you got kidney punch points. You know, there's a lot of things you can do with that. But I think it's very important, and it truly allows you to break away from stereotypes for weapons, class, spells, monsters as a dungeon master. It opens up the game so much. It truly makes it a sandbox of creativity for both dungeon masters and players. And I was going to add a second point, but I don't care because it's the most important point, is that it opens up the games. It breaks down limitations and frontiers that have been existing for a long time. And as you know, I'm all about breaking the stereotypes. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, because this is actually going to be a really short video. Apparently having a baby limits you in time now and then. But yeah, reflavoring. Talk to me. What are the best reflavors that you've done? Why do you reflavor? How did other people react to it? Maybe did it work? Are you still doing, or were you scared? Did people bash on you, and did you go back to playing I don't know, a normie paladin instead of an awesome nature wielding force of paladin powers? Actually, no, that might sound like it came from nowhere, but today one of the reasons I recorded is today I saw someone asking for a Halloween session. Oh, do you want us to make Halloween themed characters, or do we have to take boring stuff like a paladin? And I was like, how the hell can you not make a Halloween themed paladin? You have the Oath of Ancients who can summon like brambles, if I'm not mistaken. How can you not make those look like pumpkin vice? How can you not make your armor very Halloweeny themed as a paladin? You can be lawful and Halloween themed and smite the living bejeebus out of the people around you. And I want people to realize that it is one of my main selling points as to why I like 5e and why I like working with 5e, is the unparalleled amount of flexibility that it allows to its players, as opposed to some of the previous editions where certain rules were actually prohibiting you from doing stuff like Chaotic Paladin, or where people would have mocked you for having chicken missiles. So there we are. That's actually it for today. It sounds a bit like a rant, but I'm actually here to just promote creativity in-game and to make people realize that you can really do what you want with your character, as long as you respect the rules of the game and you check with your DM if it's alright with the world setting. So go ahead, make your chicken shooting farmer, make your pie throwing fighter, I don't care, just do it, and have fun! And if all goes well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all again in 2 weeks in the Attic Dungeon!